and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll do the invocation. Somebody like to volunteer for the invocation? All right.
This is a prayer for common ground. Today, may I be open to other ideas and beliefs, respectful of our differences, not threatened by them. May I grow in understanding of my own motives, knowing that people often act out of their own fears. May I be a force for replacing fear with insight, helping us all to be patient and kind as we talk. Strength, real strength, can always find compromise. Working together, may we find a common ground, enable us to move forward with a shared purpose. May we see what is truly important and unites us, focusing on that to banish roadblocks of ego and fear. Today, may I be open to other ideas and beliefs. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mike. At this time, we'll move into roll call.
Director Aguilar,
Present.
Director Espinoza,
Present.
Director Lohr, Director Pereira,
Present.
Director Silvera, Director Creighton,
He's absent, but I'll be filling in for him.
And who are you?
Director Raymond,
Present.
Director McGlynn,
Present.
Director Oliveira. Here. Director Vialta.
Here.
Director Murphy.
Here.
Chair McDaniel.
Present. Do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. What is, anybody? I have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Second.
I have a second. I have a first and a second. Are there any comments from the public regarding this? Seeing none, with the first and the second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. This time we'll open up for public comment. I'll read the official dialogue if we need to for public comment. Members of the public wishing to address agenda items or comment on any item not on the agenda may do so during agenda item number 5, which is where we're at. Persons may also address any item on the agenda during consideration of that item. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and city or community of residence for the record. At this time, is there anybody who would like to make public comment? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to item number 6. And we get to recognize your service as our chair, Mr. Joe Oliveira. First of all, on behalf of the MCAG Board, Mike, I'd like to present this in recognition of your leadership for this past term and appreciate your service to MCAG.
Thank you.
Did you get Mike?
I was only expecting half a plaque since Ellie did that. Thank you.
They are twice as big as that. We got you the smaller one.
You get the gavel.
Thank you, Joe, very much. So now we'll move down to the minutes. This is an action item. We can take all of these together correctly, correct? Yes. Does anybody see any changes that need to be made, or what is the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any other comments? Seeing none, with the first and the second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. Now we have the Citizens Advisory Committee report, and we have Mr. Jackson. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. The Citizens Advisory Committee met on Friday, July the 12th. Presentations were made to the Citizens Advisory Committee with no concern with regard to each of the following items. The first action item identified on this agenda today is item 11A, approve project submittal for the State of Good Repair Program for fiscal year 2019-20. And the other three items are appearing in the consent calendar of this agenda. It will be 15A, B, and C. A is Adopt Federal Transportation Improvement Program Amendment 8, and B is Approve the State of Good Repair Third Allocation Distribution. And the last item was Approve the State Transit Assistance Quarter 3 Distribution. If there aren't any other questions or comments, that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now we're moving to the Merced Regional Waste Management Authority. Number 9, Marty.
Thank you. Number of updates to give you today. First thing, let me get this thing going here. We've got about 5 topics I'd like to go over today. One of them being the new liner that we're putting in at the Highway 59 landfill, and also the 38 new wells, gas wells that are going in at the Highway 59 concurrently. We excuse me, did a lot of talk about the UC Merced. I'll go over a little bit more about that for some of them that weren't there. And we'll go over a little bit about the expansion with the Billy Rat landfill. And kind of review the Republic contract that we talked about also. As you can see by this picture, which was taken about a week or so ago, all the dirt is hauled out of our new cell. It's a $5.1 million project, and again, the next part of this project, we will actually be putting a foot of clay all around the whole bottom, which is going to take a little bit. And as the months go along, I will update you on how this goes. But we do expect to get 7 to 8 years of airspace out of this cell, and also it is on schedule and on budget. And again, concurrently at the Highway 59 landfill, we talked a little bit about the gas earlier, and we got 38 new wells going in, and they are all going to be online starting, well, 3/4 of them are online today. By the end of the week, all of them will be online and start pulling some of that gas for the UC project, and also for some of the migration that we have going off the east side. Again, that project will be completed next week, and all the wells will be on by the end of the week. And it is also currently on budget. And the UC Merced project, we talked a lot about that here in the past hour. Again, we are in the CEQA process, and we do expect to close on the 31st with the public comment period. And we have interviewed a financial advisor, and we hope to go to the board with that in August. We will be negotiating with them in the meantime. Also, we have signed the MOU for this project, and we are currently working on a PPA. The design is continuing. It's in a concept design right now, as I think Paul alluded to earlier, and we just had our little workshop earlier. The Billy Rat landfill expansion, we talked a little bit about this last month. Board gave us directions to go forward with an appraisal, and that is in the process right now as we speak. That current landfill, as you can see down here on the very bottom of that outlined red area, is the current Billy Rat landfill. It's about 175 acres, and we still have about 35 years of airspace there. And the outlined red area is the 600 acres that we were looking to appraise. And if we were to achieve that, we're talking about 100 years of airspace. A little bit on the Republic contract. We talked a lot over the past months about where we're at to date, but I wanted to go back over the past 5 years and just show what we have done in the past 5 years. From 14 through 18, they've all been positive numbers, except for a couple of years in the waste management were small, minor setbacks. But For the most part, they've been all very positive, and in total, City of Merced's done really well, and City of Los Banos has done well over those years. And in the past 6 months, we've just recently seen this decline, and we will probably see it for another year. But overall, in the past 5.5 years, it's been very positive, almost $500,000 on that. And those are the updates I have for you.
All right, thank you, Marty. Are there any questions? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Now we'll move to Transit Joint Powers Authority for Merced County. Mr. Artis Smith. Oh, there he is. I saw you earlier on the other side of the room.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Greetings, board members. Just a couple quick updates for transit. I wanted to kind of go over the fiscal year 18, 19, 19, 20 numbers and to let you know that ridership is up 7.69% across our transportation system. Also, with those numbers being up, we just recently reached out to from Florida State University, contacted us and wanted to do a study on our transit increase. Because there was like 11 transit agencies across the entire nation that had an increase in ridership, and Merced County was one that was identified by them, and from their research department, they wanted to reach out to figure out, what we're doing. Of course, Measure V has contributed a lot to that increase in ridership, and so we want to thank you folks again for implementing that project, and so you'll be hearing more about that as time comes on. Recently just restarted fueling at the new operation maintenance facility. It was a long time coming as far as getting all the permits and stuff together, but now we're actually fueling on site there, and so hopefully with this significant savings in our fueling costs because we're not driving back and forth to fuel our buses. We had a successful adaptive pump campaign from July the 20th to June the 20th, I'm sorry, July the 5th. We carried over 20,000 passengers just on that campaign alone, so that was very successful. Our operation and maintenance service contract, we had excellent turnout, and hopefully that'll lead to some very competitive proposals. On the 8th of August, we'll be doing our evaluations, and also on the 13th, we'll have the actual interviews, and so we'll be coming back to you asking for more information from that as well. We're actually preparing the scope of work for the building next door, and so we're once again coming back to you with that information as we receive it. Hopefully we'll get some good bids for the construction project next door as well. I think that is all the update I have. That is all the update I have for the transit.
Thank you, Artis. Any other questions? No? Okay, we'll move into the next one, number 11. Artis, you're still here. Don't leave yet.
Thank you once again. As you can see from your staff report.
What's that?
No, I was just, thank you again, yeah. And
Approved project submittal for, this is item number 11, approved project submittal for the State of the Good Repair Program for fiscal year 2019-2020.
thank you, sir. Staff is prepared to submit a project funding request to Caltrans, and a board resolution is required to follow into the project for 1920 for the State of Good Repair, and also a resolution is also required. As you folks know, we did submit 2 grant applications, one for the low or no emission bus program, and one also for the operations and maintenance program, where we're trying to procure 5 electric buses. And so the funds from the State of Good Repair for the $394,000 will be used toward that project. And so once again, we're seeking approval to adopt a resolution as stated in your staff reports, and also to authorize our executive director to sign on behalf of the Caltrans in executing that contract.
Thank you, Artis. Any other questions? Any comments from the public regarding this? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais. What is the pleasure of the board? We can take both of these items together, A and B.
Move to approve.
I have a motion on the floor.
Second.
And a second. Further comments? Seeing none with the first and the second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Artis, thank you. Merced County Association of Governments. Now we'll move to number 12, Valley EV Aviation, Ground Innovations Coalition. Keith Bergthal. You have a presentation for us? Tag team. No, nice to see you gentlemen again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
Welcome.
so much. Well, we're really pleased to be able to be here with you today. We wanted to provide a briefing. We had a meeting at Castle Airport a few months ago, and it went very, very well. And the purpose of that meeting was to really kind of bring everybody up to speed about the state of the technology for the advancement of electrified aviation. And I think when people talk about electrification, they think about ground transportation, and rightfully so. We see electric cars, we're seeing now electric buses. Your transit agency is applying for funds there. We're seeing electric trucks, but a lot of people don't realize that there's a huge amount of effort going into electrifying aviation. And so what I'm here today to do is to provide you with an update, to talk to you about a coalition that we're trying to get established all across the San Joaquin Valley, across all 8 counties, and I'll kind of explain as to why we see the value of this coalition for the region. So the photo that you see up here is a photo of 4 electric aircraft that we have at Fresno Chandler Executive Airport. These are aircraft that we acquired through a grant through Fresno County Transportation Authority, and they arrived in March of 2018. I've been flying these aircraft now for well over 14 months. They are amazing, and they are the first production electric aircraft in the United States. In fact, we have the largest fleet of production electric airplanes in the world right now in Fresno. And we see the opportunity to expand this all up and down the region, and I'll get into that shortly. So really our current transportation choices here in the Valley, I think we all know. We have the very limited commercial airline service. Merced, fortunately, has some good airline service through Boutique Air, who some of my colleagues actually used yesterday to go to a meeting in Modesto from Los Angeles, and we're very impressed with that service. And then, of course, we have commercial charter aircraft and then private aircraft, which many people in the Valley actually use to get around, myself being one of them. So what our goals are for this project is to leverage our sustainable aviation project that was established in Fresno County and expand the network of electric aircraft charging infrastructure up and down the region. We have over 20 general aviation and general purpose airports in the region. And most of these airports are well within the range of even the aircraft that I'm currently flying, which has about a 60 nautical mile range and still landing with a substantial state of charge remaining. And then providing a location for testing and validation of all of the new technologies that are coming, the thin-haul electric commuter airliners, as well as what's referred to as eVTOLs, the electric vertical and takeoff aircraft that are being developed. There's over 157 of these designs currently being developed all around the world for reducing urban congestion, but also improving mobility to areas that currently don't have airports. And ultimately with this plan is to develop new training and job opportunities and improve connectivity with our communities using this advanced zero-emission technology. So some of the project benefits, I won't go through all of these, but I think one of the really important things to consider here is that electric aviation lowers the cost. And in for an airline that is using these aircraft, because the electric propulsion system is so low in cost compared to internal combustion engines like either jets or pistons. And that opens up the door for routes that otherwise would not be economically viable or have not been economically viable. And so that is a key element of what we're hoping to do with this coalition. And then, of course, showcasing the Valley as a center for innovation, which we all know it is. Not everybody outside of the Valley really realizes that, but we know it is. And of course, we have a really good opportunity for total renewable sources of power to provide the energy for these aircraft through the abundance of solar that we have in the Valley and the opportunity to use that solar to actually charge up aircraft as well as cars, buses, trucks, and other equipment at our regional airports, turning them basically into zero-emission multimodal transportation hubs. This is a picture of one of the aircraft that we have currently, and this is a charger design that the company that builds that aircraft, Pipistrel in Europe, has come up with, and they've now subsequently gone to full production with a actual electric aircraft charger unit that is capable of being located at an airport just like an electric car charger. These are some of the aircraft that are either in development or actually flying and very close to being commercially available. The Sunflyer there by Bay Aerospace is actually being constructed in Colorado, and you can see those dates there. Those are estimated dates for when they will receive certification through the FAA and be able to go to production. The Cora eVTOL by the company Kitty Hawk, that's co-owned by Larry Page, is actually flying. Those aircraft are actually flying in Hollister, which is pretty amazing. I've actually seen those aircraft flying, and also seen some things that I can't really talk about, but yeah, they're pretty incredible aircraft. And then recently at the Paris Air Show, the Eviation Alice, which is actually manufactured in Israel, that company brought that aircraft. That's a fully functional aircraft. They brought it to the Paris Air Show a few weeks ago. They basically announced that they were going to be bringing it to Phoenix for flight testing, as well as Moses Lake, Washington, and their plans are to get it certified and into operation by 2022 to 2025. They already have orders from airline Cape Air that operates service very similar to Boutique Air on the East Coast and in parts of the Midwest, and that's an aircraft that could easily operate out of just about every one of our regional airports, even some of the smallest that we have. This was NASA's outlook for electric aircraft a few years ago, and the developments in terms of where the technology is today and where it's going in the not too distant future. And it's not just going to be confined to smaller aircraft. As you can see, it will be all the way up to aircraft as large as a Boeing 747, or even aircraft that potentially are even larger than that. Our current flight operations with the aircraft that we have now are to these airports. We've set up a network of chargers at Fresno Chandler, at Mendota, and at Reedley. And we have a fourth charger that we can use as a portable and take it to airports like up in Madera or down to Hanford, or even actually to Merced. The aircraft is more than capable of reaching Merced Regional from Chandler, and then charging up and flying even further. And when you start to look at new commercial flight operations that some of these new thin hull designs will open the door for, we see that it opens up opportunities for many of our communities up and down the valley to get actual commercial air service. Similar to Boutique Air, but it could actually grow to be larger than that, and open up doors to flights to areas that currently don't have them on the coast, or even down to Los Angeles or the Bay Area. And then when you start looking at the eVTOL operations, those aircraft can go into places that don't have airports at all, and they can actually take the place of high-cost helicopter service in many of those areas, and provide a very cost-effective means of moving people in both emergency conditions or just if they need to have transportation from those locations. And then really this is kind of our objectives for this project, and I'll let Mr. Berkthel come up and kind of talk about the framing that we want to do here. But one of the things I think is really important to understand is the cost differential for operation. So as I said, I've been flying these aircraft now for about 14 months. It costs about $4 an hour to fly one of those electric aircraft that I'm flying today, compared to about $30 an hour for a piston engine trainer that would do the same job. And that differential is what's giving people really a lot of excitement in this space, because it opens up that potential for really reducing our cost of operation and making service to communities that otherwise couldn't be connected because of the cost, because the passenger loads would have to be much higher than the community could support. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Berkthel and let him discuss our framing.
Do you all have copies of this? Okay, perfect. I'm Keith Berkthel, and I'm really grateful to be with you today. Joseph and I are on the board of a little company that does workforce development down in Fresno County called Regenerate California Innovation. And one of our other board members is Jose Antonio Ramirez, the city manager of Livingston. He's been a big partner in this, trying to help us move this big project. I think the best way for me to characterize this is that this whole thing with electric propulsion and aviation and ground transportation is just a really sexy way to get into economic development. This is a new propulsion system. It's a new industry that we think has so much potential for our valley to create new jobs and a whole new base of work and skill sets and things like that that can make us globally competitive. This valley has 260 to 300 days a year when we can fly, unlike a lot of other places in the United States, and we're right next to two of the largest markets in the world. The planes Joseph's flying can't get licensed in the Bay Area or Southern California to be tested. All these things can be tested here. We've got 20 some odd airports that are all underutilized. General aviation is very stressed, as you know. And this is an opportunity for us to rethink those assets. These are assets that are kind of wasting away that we could reuse for a new economy here in the valley. So the idea for us is to begin to think about what would this take. One is we need every council of government, association of government. We think transportation should lead on this. But it also needs to include our workforce development boards, our economic development boards. We met with the Merced County economic development people in Castle. We need the community colleges. There's all kinds of new skill certifications for manufacturing of electric propulsion, for maintenance and repair, the technicians that'll work on these planes. I don't know about you, but what Joseph's really beginning to describe is air taxis that are electric. They can go like this, like the Jetsons, you know? And we're going to test those kinds of things. I'm not going up without a pilot. Not maybe my kids will, but I'm not, right? We got a pilot shortage globally. We're going to need pilots for all these new aircraft. We could train pilots in the San Joaquin Valley at every single one of these airports. We could be testing and validating all this equipment. We can draw in manufacturers, servicers, et cetera, to create a whole new industry that we could be a leader in the world, or we could let China do it. The first thing we need to do is make sure you feel like you're part of this. We feel like this is a Valley initiative and that the competitive advantage of this approach is the whole Valley working together. And we think it's something that can tie us together. We need the governor's office to establish a California electric aircraft working group. Washington State has one, we don't. And that working group could help organize us in terms of how we use all this and integrate all this stuff and then actually, you know, take it into economic development. We need to have this electric charging infrastructure, so we need to find some grants and make sure all these airports have. Joseph did a flight the other day, he did a couple different hops. He had to actually drive the day before and drop off his battery charger, right? We don't think that's going to work long term. You know, a dog won't hunt very long, you know, if you have to drive ahead the day before.
So you can't
drop off
take your battery charger with you?
Yeah, the plane,
It's a little bit too heavy.
a little too heavy, right? In fact, he almost didn't fly with me one day. I was a little heavy that day, you know? We need to study what's happening globally in electric propulsion and manufacturing to see how we can create competitive advantage. When he was talking about the Eviation Alice plane, they're going to do some testing in Washington State. You know why? There are electric motor manufacturers there. There's all kinds of things we could link if we could get ahead of this. We need to look at opportunity zones. We looked at the map of most of these airports in the 8 counties. They're either in opportunity zones or they're next to opportunity zones. We need to get 5G infrastructure emphasized in here. We need the governor to do that. So we need to get this kind of broadband and 5G infrastructure so we can create career technical education and get our kids involved in all kinds of new digital applications and productivity, things like that. And then finally, we think we together maybe could convince the state or the federal government even to change the rules where these workforce programs could pay for pilot training. Currently, they won't. They're outrageously expensive. We need to figure out a way to get them reasonable and get somebody else to help pay for it so our kids can become pilots. We're here to make you aware of this so that we can come back at a future meeting and hopefully tempt you into being leaders in the Valley as we kind of organize this together and see if we can't do something different in the San Joaquin Valley to create jobs for our kids. I'm going to turn it back to Joseph. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith, Joseph. I know Mike Villalta has already asked, he has a question.
Sure.
What's the cost of the airplanes as opposed to a piston-driven?
They're actually about the same. So the 4 aircraft that we acquired were about $140,000 each, which they were light sport type aircraft, and a typical light sport aircraft today, brand new, a piston engine is about $140,000 to $100,000. Actually, some of them are $250,000. So these aircraft were actually less costly than the piston counterpart. And when you look at the overall cost of the fuel and then look at the reduced maintenance, there's no spark plugs, there's no oil to change, there's no hazardous materials. The cost savings are really quite phenomenal.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mike Glenn?
I have 2 questions. You mentioned a 60 nautical mile range.
Yes.
Is that an optimal range, or what kind of average is that?
That's probably the outside range for landing with about a 25 to 30% battery reserve. That's not taking the batteries down to 0, okay? And so, I mean, you can fly the aircraft longer. Pipistrel says, the manufacturer says the aircraft has a 70 nautical mile range to 75 nautical miles. but that's taking the batteries down below their optimal level for long-term endurance of the battery system.
Okay, and then being here in the valley, have you studied any agricultural applications?
Well, this aircraft was designed as a flight trainer. It was designed for pilot training. The aircraft certainly, electric aircraft could certainly do ag operations. There's no reason they couldn't. Ag operations are typically short hops with fairly high payloads, drop off the payload and then come back to base. That's a good application for electric propulsion.
What about crop dusting?
Yeah, exactly. That would be a really good application for crop dusting. In fact, there's a company there's a small airline in Vancouver, British Columbia, that is currently planning to remove PT6 turbines from their de Havilland Beaver float planes and replacing them with electric propulsion systems for the short flights that they do between Vancouver and Victoria. So those kinds of short flight applications are perfect for electric propulsion with the battery technology the way it is today.
Thank you.
And that eviation, Alice, just so you understand the range of that aircraft is designed to go 650 nautical miles on a charge and travel at 275 miles per hour to do that. So very viable aircraft for the kind of short-haul, intercity type of service that we see so much here in California. And I will tell you that many of the companies, these are not small startup companies that are working on this. Boeing and Airbus are both heavily engaged in developing electric propulsion systems for future aircraft designs within both of those companies.
I'd like one of your flyers.
Sure, certainly.
Thank you. Rodrigo?
So we have a huge runway in Castle.
Yes, sir.
And you see the big purpose for that we can use here in Merced County, right? In regards to all types of aviation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I reached out to Scott Malta, the airport manager at Castle, right after Eviation announced that they were bringing the Alice to Phoenix, and then they were going to take it up to Moses Lake. They chose Moses Lake, as Keith said, because of the close proximity to Magna X, who is building their electric motors for the aircraft in Redmond, Washington. But they also chose it because it has a 13,000-foot runway. And so I told Scott, I said, in an email, I said, if you're okay, I'm going to reach out to Eviation and say, when they want to start doing some testing during hot weather, which they need to do, Castle would be the perfect place to do it. So,
thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Mr. Murphy.
Yes, sir.
It was mentioned earlier, I think, that these flights can't be tested in the Bay Area, but they can be here. And why is that? What's the difference?
Well, the FAA, being a very cautious organization that it is, when the first electric aircraft, our aircraft are not the first of their kind to actually come into California. There were 2 Alpha Electros that were purchased by an organization in Compton, and they brought those aircraft in about 6 months ahead of us. The owners of the aircraft tried to get airworthiness certification for the aircraft, and they wanted to fly them out of Compton. And the FAA said, no way, you're not going to do that. In fact, there's a regulation that says that you cannot fly experimental aircraft over densely populated population areas. And so that organization fought with the FAA for 10 months before they got their airworthiness certs. When we got our aircraft, because of where we were at Fresno Chandler and the lack of density around us and the open space that we had here in the San Joaquin Valley, the FAA gave us our airworthiness certifications in 3 days. And they told us that the reason they were not having any problem with us was because of where we were. The Valley actually has a competitive advantage for evaluation and testing of these advanced technologies under the FAA regulations.
Certainly very intriguing. Did that give you pause, though? So, I represent Merced. We've got our regional airport that's inside our city limits at the edge, but...
Yes, your airport would be fine because you're taking off and landing not over densely populated areas. So, yeah, it'd be very easy to do. In fact, I've already scoped out Merced Regional as a location for charging, and looked at opportunities to bring our portable charger there so we could fly the aircraft there. It's well within range.
Mr. Pereira?
Yeah, don't really have any questions right now. It's all kind of new, but just wanted to say that I think this is a great idea, and just kind of lend encouragement to your organization and keep us, or at least keep me apprised of what's going on, and whatever I can do to help, I'd like to do that.
Absolutely.
We'll
Thank you
do
so
it.
much.
You've been gracious with your time, but I guess there's one thing I just want to illustrate. Most of our transportation systems are two-dimensional, length and width. How many lanes, how long, how many cars or trucks fit there. This technology of electrification creates all kinds of vehicles that we can occupy airspace with that couldn't go there before. And Boeing's mentioned, and we didn't have the video here today, that they're working on new traffic management software systems that will allow them to manage piloted flights and autonomous flights at the same time. All of a sudden, we can put thousands and thousands of aircraft into space that could only have a few before. And that just changes the whole transportation.
Sounds like the
equation.
Jetsons.
It does. And you know what?
It does.
That's what's happening with this electrification and the new software that's available. We think the Valley should be a leader in this industry.
Yeah,
And we would like to partner with you. Thank you.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to item number 13, Caltrans report. Dan McElhaney. Sir, this is great to have you here twice in, what, a couple months? Phenomenal. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members, directors. I appreciate this chance to update you. I'm Dan McElhaney. I'm your district director for Caltrans, covering highways here in Merced, as well as Merced County, as well as 7 other counties for the state. And I have provided a handout, which is a letter to you with an update. And so I'll go through that handout. Recently, Executive Director Stacy Dabbs and I, we've kicked off our partnership executive steering committee meetings. We met here in July, on July 11th, and it gives our teams a chance to really focus on Merced County highways, related issues and opportunities for the transportation system here in the county. We went through, if you look at the attachment that I have provided, we put together a map of the county with a list of projects attached and numbers corresponding on the map. And those are active projects for Caltrans and partners here in the county, and they're listed by route and post mile. And then the next to last column, you can see the phase they may be in, construction or PS&E is plan, specs, estimates, design phase. RTL is it's ready to list for advertisement, and PA&ED is the environmental and approval phase. On the second page of that attachment, we also included project initiation documents and closeout projects listed by route and post mile. So, and the important thing for Executive Director Dabbs and I is that we have a full picture of what we've got going, whether it's in the planning phase all the way through the maintenance. There's some HM projects listed, highway maintenance projects, and it's a great strategy planning tool, and we have very good discussions and seeing to be sure that we're covering as many of the needs here in the county on current projects and planned projects. So I wanted to present that for your reference as well today. Recently I met at Hillmore High School with Assembly Member Adam Gray and Supervisor Pereira. That was great. Lloyd, thank you for joining, Supervisor. Hillmore School Board members, Matt Fell. Matt, thank you for joining us. To discuss, there's been a number of requests over the years on what we can do on Route 165 to improve school zone safety. So we're taking another look at that. I was able to present a proposal for 2 pedestrian hawk signals. These are pedestrian push-button signals that provide a yellow and flashing red and are being implemented statewide. So moving forward with working with the team and the Assembly Member's office in towards those 2 hawk pedestrian, one in front of the high school, one in front of the elementary school. So that was good progress. We plan to get back together August 16th to also talk about the 165 Gear Avenue intersection. And I've got my team doing a traffic safety review there. That's a very busy intersection in the mornings and in the afternoons as on school days. And as it's really the first intersection coming into Hillmar. And I want to see what we can do to finish that study, talk about the current signing, the current lighting, potential for a roundabout, potential for a signal. So we'll be updating on August 16th. Hello, we're in Atwater. It's got to be the worst pavement on 99.
Thank you for recognizing.
But don't worry, I've got that project on track with help of the team members. And I didn't bring a full presentation on that today. But if you haven't noticed, the pavement throughout Atwater on 99, we're going to do something about this. It's a great project, great investment in 99. It's a contract that's under design. It's going to be awarded early next year. It's going to be out in construction for sure this time next year. It's not just your asphalt pavement reconstruction project. We're going travel way, outside shoulders, all lanes for over 16 miles. And we're going to put in reinforced concrete pavement, not asphalt. So we're going to reconstruct the inside shoulders with asphalt. So the main line's concrete, the inside shoulders are asphalt. The ramps will be a variation of concrete and asphalt. We're going to remove that median thrive beam barrier and the oleanders, and we're going to pave the median and add a new concrete barrier for safety as well as for safety of maintenance workers, because guardrail in the median gets hit often enough, even with minor accidents, and then we have our safety issues with having our maintenance employees out in the median. So concrete barrier is a great way to go. There's various drainage improvements. We're going to lower the mainline profile under Applegate so we get our standard vertical clearance for trucks. That's 18 inches lowering there. We have auxiliary lanes at the Applegate Road interchange to provide additional opportunities for motorists to decelerate and accelerate on and off the ramps. And we're improving the ramp geometry so it's a smoother merge. So I just wanted to highlight that. We'll be out in construction spring 2020.
And so is there any plans maybe to build a barrier wall along the southbound 99 after you get past the Applegate exit? Because there's just a chain link fence there right now. From that, and what's the name of the road that runs parallel with 99? I don't think that's SP. Is it Commerce? What is it?
Bell, some Bell, part of Bell, or SP?
Commerce. Yeah, it's Commerce.
So take a look at.
Because you know where Walmart is.
So
as soon as you
it's
get beyond that, it's just a chain link fence.
Frontage road with narrow median between frontage road and highway
Yeah.
shoulder? Okay.
Yeah,
I'll double check that. I don't know the specifics along there, but on other jobs, we have put in a more positive barrier, more
Perfect.
potential. So we'll follow up on that.
Just for your consideration. Thanks.
In fact, every meeting until we kick off construction, we're going to highlight that project. So we'll check on that one. So I'm glad that $90 million in SHOP funds, state highway funds, are being invested for their project. And I want to thank the team for their work on there. I did get a chance to, and Stacy and I have talked about this too, I got a chance to go out to Planada and working with, we met with Joe, our deputy director from the county, and then on the 11th, I went out and inspected the intersection in follow-up to your request, sir.
Long crosswalk.
And so on Plainsburg Road. And again, that's another intersection that's the welcoming intersection coming into, one of our important towns. And so we're taking another look at the signing and the striping and the lighting. One of the highway lighting at the intersection was on during the day, and it was the old high pressure sodium yellow. So I asked my maintenance manager, he checked with the county maintenance manager. Actually, the county took the lead and put in the LED lighting on 140, so thank you. And they're following up with replacing that yellow highway lighting with an LED light this month. And so our maintenance teams are coordinating on that. So we're following up with a traffic review of, like I said, signing and striping, potential for a roundabout. I don't know about the potential for a signal, but we need to do a little more to slow down traffic approaching town and address the pedestrian needs there. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Just the LED, or there's no push hawk system like Hilmar?
Well, I just went out and reviewed the existing facility, and that there's an existing highway lighting that had the old high-pressure sodium lighting. So county maintenance and Caltrans maintenance are working to replace that with that one light stand. There's multiple LED lighting in both directions on 140, so that's good. Our traffic team's looking at the opportunities for, if we put in like a hawk system or any type of pedestrian signal there, there's currently not sidewalks on both sides. There's the business driveways are sort of taking up the, it's the southwest corner, so there's no landing sidewalk and
There's going
curb
to
and
be a
gutter,
sidewalk
so.
installed there in the future on the business in the corner, on the west side of that street. on
Great,
Plainsburg.
yeah, and actually, Joe from the county, he presented, thank you for reminding me, he presented a roundabout concept there that included the sidewalks. You're right. And we're supportive of that roundabout. We just haven't figured out a path towards, project approval, design, and funding.
Well,
So-
the citizens don't want a roundabout, actually, they just want a crossing line with push-button hawk systems, which would probably be better. And it's, because I see the roundabout has taken longer and more funds that we don't have here from MSRV funds, and that's slated to probably happen after 2025. It's not priority. So we don't see that happening anytime soon, so that's why a hawk system will probably work better there, and a lot less expensive.
So I'll get back with county staff about the sidewalk for that site, because I think that was missing information. So, because that would tie it all together. Thank you. And so, again, I do have my traffic staff focused on that. It's great news that City of Los Banos got the Sustainable Communities Planning Grant. That helps us all move forward on the Pioneer Road specific plan, so I mentioned that in the letter, and this is great news moving forward, and our plan to continue to work for congestion relief on Route 152. So I wanted to mention that. At the previous meeting, the mention about the pavement dip on 99 northbound, it turned out it was actually in Madera County, but we got our Caltrans maintenance team in Madera County to address that with Granite Construction, so I hope you're seeing some changes there on that highway dip since mid-June. Route 59 intersection improvements, that project is ongoing with George Reach Construction at Santa Fe Drive, Olive Drive, and that work will be done this year. September is the current target date, and we really appreciate everybody's patience on that. That's a fantastic project to improve safety at the signalized intersection and help us address rear end and broadside collisions potentially there, as well as give ADA curb improvements and crosswalk. So that project's moving very well, and thank everybody for their patience and being work zone safe.
Mr. Chair, could I?
Yeah, was that you or was it, that must have been yours? Lloyd, you didn't push the button?
No, sir.
Okay, sorry, man.
On the Highway 59
Yes.
repair, number one, just wanted to thank you for that project. The worst traffic that we have in the entire city is on Highway 59, the most congestion on North Highway 59. And that's kind of in the central area of between 16th Street and Yosemite Avenue. But the reason I mention it is, number one, to thank you, but also to let you know that we at the City of Merced care about this stretch of road a lot, and we're going to be coming to Caltrans with some dollars to hopefully use as a match to get some additional improvement there. Even though it's not a city roadway, it's certainly a big part of our city. So I just wanted to preview that with you, that we're going to be coming to you with some dollars to maybe get a project to. Right now it's narrow and skinny, and and there's some bridges that need to be replaced that are just extremely narrow with a lot of semi trucks crossing and cars and so forth. So, thank you.
Thank you, Director. I look forward to meeting with city staff then and our design and traffic staff and kind of brainstorm,
That'd be great.
what
Yeah.
we can do to support the needs on the route, and hopefully, as a state, we can bring money to the effort as well. So, great focus. Thank you. Since our last meeting and my last update, one of the requests was for me to review bridge replacement at the Mariposa Creek Bridge. I had that moving forward. The team did a really nice job, and I was able to sign a scope in the project initiation document on June 24th to include the bridge replacement as part of the pavement preservation project, which covers 12 miles on Route 59. So we want to make sure all our planned work is in sync on Route 59, but I was glad the team came through and was able to put the bridge replacement in as part of the project, which also includes raising the profile for the new bridge. And with the begin start date in 2025, that's not too far away. We do have an asset management plan, and a lot of that is gives us time for design and environmental phase, as well as get our funding lined up for construction in 2025. But with the new bridge replacement, I'm looking forward to that project getting started. Any questions on that one?
Any other questions? Who does? You say something?
Just has one more bullet point.
One more
He
bullet
said
point.
on that project.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add something new. We do have a homeless employment litter program that we initiated with City of Stockton as a pilot, and I do have $100,000 available for Merced County or a city in Merced County to team with us. And basically, it's the opportunity to have the city or county bring on a nonprofit service provider and work with local homeless individuals for potential employment. I'm already investing in Caltrans maintenance teams and contractors in litter removal here in the county. And this program would be funded through a delegated maintenance agreement with the county or city, where I can pay the invoices that would provide funding to the nonprofit service provider. And in the Stockton example, it has decreased litter, over 5,000 bags of litter since October, and it's provided employment training for over 90 individuals that have been part of the program, and seen many of them move on to new opportunities. And I'd like to offer that here, and something that Stacy and I have also talked about moving forward, hopefully this year here in the county.
Thank you. It looks like
Thank
we got
you.
a couple questions here, Lloyd.
Yes, sir.
Pereira?
Yeah, so I don't know if you're aware or not, but the Regional Waste Authority, are you aware of?
Go ahead.
Oh, well, just working with Restore Merced to pick up trash from Bellevue out to the regional waste site on North 59. And so it's kind of a model that's already going that you might want to look at for continuation or expansion, really. So,
I will, thank you.
you're welcome.
Mr. Murphy?
The same thing. Restore Merced has a contract with the city of Merced as well. They'd be a good candidate for that. Who'd be the best point of contact to direct them to in your office?
I do have a project manager, John Oliva. But I'll pass out my business card again here in case you didn't get it last time, and they can email me or call me.
Okay, I've got
and
your
I'll set
contacts.
up my
That's
team.
great.
Thank you.
Okay, is that it?
Thank you for your leadership in transportation
No.
and the great partnership. I really, really appreciate it. and Look forward to, a great rest of the year here.
Dan, the feeling's mutual here. We appreciate the attention. It didn't seem like Caltrans had given us much attention, but since you've been here, we've much appreciative of the attention we're getting.
All right, call me anytime. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to item number 14. This is information for discussion only. This is information that's been provided within the packet. Do we have any questions or comments on the information that was provided? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to our consent agenda. I am looking for an action here. This is for A, B, C, and D. What's the pleasure of the board?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Is there comments from the public? Seeing none, with a first and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. Now we will move on to number 16, Transportation Planning and Measure V updates. This is information by Mr. Matt Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. A couple things. A few months ago, the board, we had an item talking about a new federal funding program called Highway Infrastructure Program, and you directed us to pursue a swap mechanism with the local jurisdiction that might be interested in swapping, taking the federal funds and then returning state RSTP to everybody else. We didn't get a taker, and in the meantime, there's more money. There's a second year, which we weren't expecting, so there's now $1.6 million out there. So staff's going to contact the jurisdictions again and see if we can figure out some way to figure out how to get that HIP money out there. So just that will be coming back to you. I think it's September. Van pooling. So the board a few years ago approved a CMAQ project to encourage van pooling specifically, in addition to the ride sharing that we've always been doing. And those incentives have been working. You know, we have seen an increase in van pooling, and we're continuing to do that. So we're just letting you know that that effort has been successful, and we're continuing to provide pretty substantial incentives for folks who will van pool, either in or out of Merced County. And then just one other thing, which is that the unmet needs process is coming back. So we just did it, but we're actually trying to move that process to be in the fall, which is really when we think it should be. That's the best time to do it, have the unmet needs process wrap up before the next year's transit budget and all those sorts of discussions start. So that's why, and this coming, because we just did unmet needs, this coming one may be, kind of a smaller process because people just provided comments. We want to make a big effort to not get people confused about, hey, we just told you this. Why are you asking us stuff again? So that's going to be a big part of the coming effort. So I just wanted to let you know that will be coming up. And if you had any questions on
Thanks,
any
Matt.
of the
Yeah, I think
planning?
Mr. Pereira has his button pushed.
So I have a question, and I don't know if it's actually for you or Artis, but the Measure V alternate transportation funding, or the public transportation funding that we have, the 5%.
Right.
Can we take a look at like supplementing like a Lyft or UberX rideshare program with those funds? Would that fall into the purview?
Let's get back to you on that. Let's look at that to see specifically if Measure V could be used for that, but also because the transit agency is looking at some alternatives anyway.
Right.
There may be other funding sources that can help.
And my
do
thought
those
is
things.
that if we can get people used to the idea of ride sharing, even on a micro, route versus a long distance route, maybe that then increases the opportunity to get people to long-term route as well.
Sure. And I know transit staff and my staff, we're very excited about, the microtransit that's happening throughout.
All right, thank you. Mr. Raymond, you had a question? No? Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. We'll move on to number 17. It's Mr. Fell again. It's the state budget. Housing planning support. This is something you're real excited about, I'm sure.
Sure.
As we all are.
Sure, actually, we are pretty excited about money from the state to help support local jurisdictions with
You're a
their
good
efforts
soldier.
in housing. So, the state has been doing a lot of, putting a lot of emphasis on housing, also saying a lot of good things about paying attention to the valley. And one of the state budget trailer bills has $250 million to support housing planning, and really with the goal of getting housing into production. So half of that's going to be going to cities and counties to do that, and then half is going to what's going to be a new working group for the whole San Joaquin Valley. So they really want to look at things on a broad regional basis. So to get this money, the San Joaquin Valley, we collectively have to put together this 24-person working group to basically distribute the funds. So it's the very early stages, but wanted to give you a heads up on this. And the thing that we have to do, start right now, which we're looking at, is getting those folks. So one person has to come from Merced County Board of Supervisors, and then 2 representatives from cities selected by the City Selection Committee. So I've contacted the County Administrative Officer because they're the ones who are managing the City Selection Committee, you know, which chooses representatives for LAFCO, I think, and some of the other bodies. So we're going to look at convening a meeting to make those selections because they have to be made by November 30th. And then the other thing is that the funding that will be coming to the San Joaquin Valley, Fresno COG has been selected to be the fiscal agent, you know, so they'll take care of the administrative stuff and all that kind of stuff. But there's definitely going to be a lot to be determined, including how to distribute the funds. So we just wanted to let you know that we have a role, you know, in this. This is new to us as staff, you know, being involved in housing at this level. But it's really more, it's broader than us. In this case, it's the whole San Joaquin Valley. So stay tuned, and we'll have probably more for you pretty soon on how this is going to work.
Very good. Thank you, Matt. Any other questions?
Just a quick one. For the large city, small city, is there a population breakdown?
There is not specifically. We talked about it at the Valley, and generally we're, you know, the larger city is most likely going to be the largest city,
right?
You know, and then a smaller city would be one of the other cities. That seems to be how most are approaching it.
All right, thank you, Matt. Now we'll move on to item 18, earmark repurposing. This is an action item. Ty, you got all the information, right?
Hopefully. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So many years ago, when earmarks were available, the city of Los Banos, working with Caltrans and MCAG, was able to get a federal earmark for the Los Banos bypass for the right-of-way. So that earmark was $490,000, and since then that money has not been secured because the project has not moved forward yet. So the federal government, for many cycles now, have given states the opportunity to repurpose earmarks that have been unused to some other project. And that's a great thing because from my experience, if you were trying to do it through the normal process to repurpose an earmark, it would take you 2 years. I've gone through that 2 years period before. So this allows you to do it in a matter of months. So that's a great thing. So in the past, the board has approved like prior repurposing of earmarks. Some notable ones include like the county had a Campus Parkway phase 1 earmark. They already finished construction, so they had some leftover money. So that leftover money was repurposed to do like the signalization at Campus Parkway and Childs, I believe. And then I think a more recent one that the board approved was another county earmark, and they used some unused balance to do Hillmar pedestrian improvements. So that's probably going to go to construction pretty soon. So this has been done and approved by the board before, and this is basically asking the board again to approve the repurposing of the Los Banos bypass earmark to the Pioneer Road Improvement Project.
Very good. I think it's a worthy cause. It was already purposed for that anyway. So what's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Mike Palazzo, surprising.
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Murphy. Are there any other comments from the public regarding this item? So it looks like we're going with, which one was it? Oh, it's just for the repurposing. We're on 18, sorry. I was reading ahead. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Take note, Palazzo. They all said yes. Now we'll move on to number 19, approve the Measure B Citizens Oversight Committee attendance policy. This is an action items. Mary Michael Rawling.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The Measure V Citizens Oversight Committee at their June meeting indicated that they would like to have a formal attendance policy in place for their group. At that time, staff collected the general tenets of what they wish to have in that policy, and a draft is included in your packet for your consideration. The decision is entirely within the purview of the board. You can not do it, accept the draft as is, or make any changes that you would like staff to bring back to you for further consideration. So I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Sure, does anybody have a question on this? So how often do they meet?
They meet quarterly. They're required to meet once a year, but they've
Right.
always met more frequently, and they indicated they intend to continue to do that.
Now, I know we've had further discussions about this as well. So do they need to meet all the time, or is there really just one particular meeting, and how come they're meeting more often now?
I don't know if Stacy wants to talk to the
Because
historical
if we're meeting more
perspective
often
of that.
than we first established, I don't know if we need to put in attendance. So if they're missing,
So
so I'm just trying to say, what are the reasons they're meeting more often than what?
So the initial year was quarterly because we were rolling out a brand new process. So at the end of this first cycle of getting through the annual report, and we posed this question, reminded them they only needed to meet once after the audits are approved. What I remember most clearly from that conversation was the sheer volume of material that they review. They rather do that incrementally, and the jurisdictions provide that on a quarterly basis, that allows them to make that review throughout the year, ask questions, have that kind of dialogue if there's any, and then they'll have their one main meeting for the year that they'll take action and approve the statement that, they've reviewed everything and they found no issue. So it was actually, from staff's perspective, we left it up to them, and they wanted to do it on a quarterly basis.
Okay.
They also wanted
Okay,
the policy.
Right, and the policy does state that the one meeting that's really the most important that happens in January to approve the audit be the one that's mandatory.
Okay. So did the COC help draft this policy?
They provided all the direction
They did.
that's
Oh, good.
in the policy.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions? Yes?
If I might.
Yes, you may.
While this, because I hear some hesitation, I don't think it's outside of possibility that if this board wanted to include in their direction that this is what you're approving upon ratification of the committee or a vote of so that you're recommending it, but if your concern is if you want them to also take action on it, we can ask them to do that. They technically don't have the authority, but it would be an exercise we could do subsequent to this decision if you felt that was something you'd want to see.
I don't have a problem with with that, or I don't care one way or another.
Okay.
But it's up to whoever, the maker of the motion, I guess.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve it and let them make the final determination. I mean, they donate their time, and if they're willing to do a better job by coming to more meetings, who are we to say, no,
Right.
you're doing too much?
Okay, I have a first and a second. Are there further comments?
I have one question.
Sure.
If on the mandatory meeting, there was an over compelling reason that a person could not attend, would
Yeah.
that person receive any consideration towards that, or would they automatically be considered vacated?
Do we need to approve excuses? Is that what you-
So I asked that exact question of the committee, and they felt that the policy should be silent on that. They didn't want it to be very detailed.
Okay, that was their decision.
Yes.
All right.
I had that same concern.
Ask that question.
If you're in, Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
I mean, if
please.
you're in the hospital for an accident.
Right.
That would, it just seems pretty drastic because it's mandatory, if they miss that meeting, they are off the committee. It's not up to a vote of the committee to approve or unapprove the absence.
Right.
They take their jobs very seriously.
Yeah. There we go. Okay, board, I have a first and a second. So, no further comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposition?
Nay.
Motion. Oh, with one opposition, Mr. Raymond. Okay, thank you, Mary. Michael? We'll move on to number 20, approve the Measure V Regional Project recommendations. Mr. Fell, you're back to the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The East and West Regional Project Committees have concluded their recommendations, which are included in the staff report. And if the board approves those recommendations, then we would, we're asking for you to approve their recommendations and direct staff to release the draft implementation plan and schedule public hearings as required by the expenditure plan and then bring it back to you for adoption, which would most likely be in September.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions at the dais? I think we've all been involved in all these.
Motion to approve A and B.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposition? Seeing none, this motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 21. This is an information item. Regional Transportation Improvement Program, RTIP concept. Ty.
Thank you again. It's unfortunate I don't have the flow chart in front of me, but that's okay.
What happened to it? Did it go out?
That's fine.
Okay.
I think, in my opinion, the RTIP and Measure V are the most important tools to actually implement major regional projects, because we're talking big bucks for both programs. So the RTIP, every 2 years, regions get the opportunity to propose the programming of the region's shares of funds to major regional projects. The last cycle, the board approved the programming of $5.5 million toward Caltrans's Livingston widening project. So, and that's for construction. By the way, that's going to construct, I think, October of this year. I think that's what the director told me the other day. So that's great news. So the money is being put toward construction of a worthwhile regional project. So that happened because of the board's proposal to program the $5.5 million of the regional shares toward that project. So that's the importance of this particular program. Do you understand that? Okay, great, without the flow chart. So every 2 years, the California Transportation Commission releases like a fund estimate of what the regional shares will be, right? In this recent fund estimate, it's a little bit different from what's in your agenda package. It does include the carryover of $26 million. I think it's like $26.2 million. But instead of like $2.4 million in new programming capacity, it's actually $4 million. So the amount that is available to program with or not, it's at the board's discretion, is $30 million in this cycle. And the programming would have to be done in the last 2 years of this 5-year program. It's a 5-year program. So the programming capacity is typically available to propose programming in the last 2 years, because it carries over like 3 years from the last cycle. So the state, the CTC, is committed to delivering those 3 years in this new cycle. Does that make sense? It's a 5-year program. 3 years gets carried over. 3 years is committed to, so you can only propose programming the latter 2 years. I think that question was raised at some point in time, so I want to make sure that was made clear. So you could, the board could propose the programming of up to $30 million to a regionally significant project within our region. There are criteria that the CTC has set. One of them is a project initiation document, a PID. I think the director mentioned a PID document. It's a PID, or project study report, is basically a project scoping document. I'm going to have to educate you a little bit here. A project scoping document is required because it basically lays out what is the need, and then what is the purpose of the project in addressing that need, looking at various alternatives to address that purpose and need, and then looking at the possible obstacles that you might confront in trying to deliver the project, environmental, right-of-way, and so forth. And then looking at the funding sources that are available to deliver the project, and given all those things, lay out a schedule. Do you understand the importance of having that in place to be eligible to propose a project? Because that makes sense, right? You're trying to propose a project without the scope, without the funding picture, and without the schedule. Why are you proposing it? So that's the importance of having a PSR as a requirement for proposing a project in this RTIP document. The other thing is it has to be a project that's listed in the MCAG's Regional Transportation Plan. So the plan includes all major regional projects. That's been determined by the region through this board. So it makes sense to have that project in there because it's properly vetted, right, and approved. So that's a requirement as well. The other thing is, if you're proposing funding for a regional project, like a phase of it, say it's construction, I want to share again the Caltrans's Livingston widening example. It's a plan that has to include full funding for that phase of work. So we, proposed $5.5 million, but the project itself cost $40 million, right? So it was Caltrans who put together their proposal with their share to identify realistically the rest of the money so that the CTC could take action and say, okay, fine, you have the region's $5.5 million and Caltrans has their remaining balance. And their remaining balance is coming from the 99 bond savings that was used for the AME. It also came from SB1 program, TCEP, Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. And it also came from, of course, our share and Caltrans's share as well. So it made up the full funding picture. Without that, it's going to get shot down by the CTC because it makes no sense. Why are you asking for $5.5 million for a $40 million construction project when you don't have the rest of the money? So does that make sense?
Completely.
Okay, great. This was the same session I had with the CAC too, except with the flow chart. So those are some critical requirements for the board to propose an eligible regional project for programming with the RIP dollars that are available. And I mentioned before, the amount that's available in this cycle is $30 million. And that includes the $26 million that was carried over, basically unspent monies. Smaller regions like ours, we tend to accumulate, bank the money until we have enough to get it to construction.
Very good, Ty. Thank you very much. Is there any questions?
There's no, I just, one comment.
One comment.
Ty, would you mind just really quickly walking through the next steps of the schedule? I know you have it in your staff report, but like from this point till
yes,
CTC adoption?
Let me look at it.
It's on 122.
Oh, okay. So this is basically laying out the concept of the RTIP, right? So what will happen after this is staff is going to come to you next month and ask for direction. Do you want to propose a project for programming in this RTIP or not?
Well, I know that AME will be ready. AME will be available. We'll have everything in place, so we would be able to go after this.
So, like I said, staff will be coming to you next
Yes.
month for that direction. This is just laying out the concept right now.
I understand. No, we've had a lot of discussions on that. So
Following that, staff will need to prepare a draft RTIP that needs to be go out for public review and comments for like 30 days. And then the board needs to take action before November. Could be October. But by November, because staff has to submit an adopted RTIP proposal to the California Transportation Commission by mid-December. So all regions are required to meet that deadline. We have to submit a proposal. If it includes nothing, we still have to submit it by mid-December. And the California Transportation Commission staff will review the proposals and try to combine it into their STIP document for public review and comments and public hearings. But our deadline is like mid-December.
Right. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Ty, very much. So now we're moving on to item number 22, which is an action item, proposed agenda items for consideration. Determine if there is a majority support for the following items to be researched by staff and brought back to the governing board at a future meeting for consideration. MCAG, TJPA, RWA governing board composition, and B, MCAG, RTPA, RWA governing board meeting times. So I'll open it up for discussion.
Mr. Chair, I'll take the first one.
Sure.
This was my.
So this is A?
Request to be on the agenda. The only action this is set for us this afternoon is simply to have it agendized at a future meeting for action. So it would be a discussion around the composition of this board and potentially changing the composition of the board. So I hope to have your support in just having a conversation about it. That's all we're committing to by moving this forward.
Yes, one.
I'm full agreement with that. Bring it up to the board for discussion and to have staff research and just have a discussion regarding composition, and that's it.
Is there a composition that's being presented, or are you wanting that in the discussion?
So a couple things. I think it'd be helpful to get some perspective from staff on what other COGs do. I know, Fresno COG, for example, has a composition that's different than ours.
26 cities.
Right. But also, frankly, a lot of the conversation is around whether all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors should be on the MCAG board. So, a scenario that includes a reduced number of board members down from 11.
Okay. So is that a first and a second then on item A?
I'll move that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Let's call for a roll call vote.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
This is, again, for discussion, right? Okay, yes.
Director Pereira,
No.
Director Raymond,
Yes.
Director McGlynn,
Yes.
Director Oliveira,
Yes.
Director Vialta,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
motion passes.
Did you vote?
I haven't voted yet.
Chair McDaniel.
Okay. Okay, so motion passes. So we'll go to.
Tell us.
Huh? You guys know where I stand. The unrepresented communities will be here to tell you where I stand. Then we'll go to B, on the meeting time. I think that was Mr. Espinoza's.
Yeah, I requested for this, I've been asked from citizens in the past, and I brought it forward when I was mayor, requesting that, it be around at least at 4 or 5, so that citizens could come in later and for more transparency and for their meetings that they want to attend. So, because usually we don't have that much attendance anyway, so I'm just requesting that it be at least at 5 o'clock. So it's not too late. That way more citizens can attend, so.
So this is a vote for further discussion about the times?
Correct.
I'll second that.
I have a first and a second. Is there further conversation?
Sorry, just so all of the directors are aware, both of these changes would require an eventual vote by the board that would require a 2/3 majority to change. Both the meeting time is set in the bylaws, as is the composition of the board, in both the bylaws and the JPA agreement, actually. And both of those documents require a 2/3 majority for amendment.
Thank you. So we have B for this consideration. Let's do a roll call vote on this one as well.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Espinoza,
Yes.
Director Pereira, Director Raymond,
Yes.
Director McGlynn,
Yes.
Director Oliveira,
No.
Director Vialta,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
Motion passes. Perfect. And then we will move to,
I have a follow-up question.
sure, Mr. McGlynn.
It's just a general question. Many things, or many items are sent to the board for study and recommendations and the like. Is there anything prohibiting any director or a group of directors from making an actual proposal themselves instead of waiting for the board to come back to them? I mean, like if Mayor Murphy wanted to say, I propose this, and just give his own thoughts and outline for our consideration, can things be done that way as well?
By a single member?
Correct.
No.
Okay.
We have a
Just-
policy for that.
Yeah, it was just for my clarification.
So can I follow on, just a clarifying question for the agenda item with the board composition? Did we give enough direction to have a proposal come back with a reduced number of county supervisors, and also giving leeway to staff to come up with other proposals based on what others are doing?
That's the direction that I took, was to look at, bring back other scenarios based on what our fellow COGs are doing, and also a scenario that at least one of those would include a reduction in the number of supervisors.
I thought we were just voting on discussion.
It is.
That's true.
The composition would be figured out after the
In the discussion.
That's
after the
right.
discussion.
I just didn't want to get here next month, to his point, and we didn't have it, something on the agenda for action. Okay.
Is it for action, or is it to take to action? The motion was for discussion.
Motion is for discussion,
Yeah.
and you can't, all the motion said was to discuss it. There's nothing about coming up with a viable
Well,
proposition.
if I could, voting yes tonight or this afternoon was to further the discussion, right?
Right.
It doesn't, we're not making any decisions here because it's only agendized to have it come on the agenda for action at the next meeting. That was
That was
my
the intent of
intention
the
anyway.
motion? That wasn't the motion.
If that wasn't clear, then I'd like to clarify that if that's not how it was understood.
Does that clarify everybody voting that way?
My interpretation was for discussion.
What was that? Sorry. Miss-
My interpretation, the motion was for discussion. That's what I based my vote on.
Yeah, to have some staff, right. So, I mean, maybe we could clarify the motion, recast the ballots if you want, but, we can't have any discussion on it until staff does work on it, and they're not going to
Yeah.
do work on it until there's a majority of us that ask for it. So the idea is to, have it agendized for action at the next meeting with different scenarios to choose from.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The policy, I think that we had was to find out if there was sufficient support to move an item forward. And if there is sufficient support, then it would, I always thought it would automatically come back as an action item for the item itself. And I think that's kind of the way the policy reads.
Well, there's kind of, or there is.
Yeah, I think-
So
I
let's
think
just
it
take
is.
it, well,
Yeah.
let's re-vote on it then, because there's a lot of confusion here on the
Yeah,
dais.
yeah.
The policy's in the packet.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Farrar.
So if we end up at a spot where we look at the recomposition of the board, and we're going to look at examples of what others do, I do know other COGs don't have all the cities represented as well, and so I think that needs to be a part of the thought process if we're going to change the composition. that
Along
we-
with other community groups and programs, and there's all kinds of options at all the COGs if you look at them.
Yeah. So if that's part of the motion, would you support it?
Support what?
I mean, if the direction to staff is to come back with those types of options that you've pointed out, does that get your support here on this motion?
I like the bylaws, what they say.
Yeah, I guess ultimately, that's my position, is I like the bylaws the way they are. So if we're gonna change it, if you guys vote to change it, well, then my input would be that everything's on the table, not just reducing the number of supervisors.
Well, that's-
Because
that's
my
your intention.
constituents aren't gonna be up for that.
That's your intention,
Right.
so.
So-
And that's understood here.
So my question though is, I mean, if you're offering a suggestion, does it get your support then of the motion, or you?
No.
Okay. Then my motion, if you're ready for a motion.
I think we have to take an action for reconsideration of the previous question on the agenda, and since we haven't closed out this meeting, that's perfectly fine. So you'd need to make a motion again, have it seconded, and do the vote again. Do you all mind if I say something from a
Please.
logistical perspective? The staff will need to bring an actual amendment to the meeting for a vote by the board. And if there are many scenarios, we will have to draft various amendments to bring to you. I just wonder if that's what, I want to clarify that that's what you're looking for, that you want to see various amendments brought. And if you don't, would you mind splitting this into 2 meetings so that you could discuss the various scenarios before we actually draft amendments?
Sure, that's a fair point. If I could, motion to reconsider the motion on the board composition, I'd like to move for that. Is there a second? I'd enjoy a second if there is one.
Okay, so we're gonna make it into 2 meetings.
So,
No.
That's up to you all.
The motion is just to reconsider the item, and then.
Oh, right now, yeah. Okay, and we had a second.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. So Mike, let me ask, and I'm in favor of this, but my question would be, if we're gonna have a discussion of all the scenarios, and we come back of what we approved, I guess, in this last motion, if we have a discussion of all the scenarios, then would it be acceptable then for the second meeting to then decide on one of those scenarios and leave the vote as it is, as a discussion now? Is that acceptable?
I mean, I'd like to have this agendized for action. That's been our typical path. And if, you know, and if we get to the next meeting and we have our discussion and we feel like we're not ready for action, we still have the leeway not to take any action.
Okay.
So
did you
So
have
does
a
it
second?
die at that time?
I did have a second, I think, by Mr. McGlynn.
Okay.
So now it's
All
an
right.
open-ended.
I have a clarifying
can't be
question.
Well, what's on the table right now is simply the motion for reconsideration that
Yeah.
was made by Director Murphy and seconded by Director McGlynn.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposition? Motion passes unanimously.
So now it's appropriate to make a motion.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, a clarifying question, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So I want to make sure I understand Emily's direction, that if we have an item on an agenda to consider these scenarios, that, let's say that's next month, and we have scenarios, we would have to have the accompanying amendment to the bylaws for every one of those scenarios at the next meeting as well, for the, like, as part of, is that what you were suggesting?
Yes, because
Then
the
that would
amendment
probably
would be-
delay when we'd be able to get this
So-
back. We couldn't have that. I will struggle to have that, we cannot have that by August. So that would also delay this discussion, just from volume of work.
So if I could,
Sure. Mr. Murphy?
so I'm sympathetic to that. I would like to see a scenario where there are 9 members of the board, and 3 of those are county supervisors, and the other 6 are cities. That's an amendment you could prepare. If staff wants to prepare and do other research as well, then they could certainly bring those
So is that
forward
a
as well. But
motion?
I'm sympathetic to the idea of not having, definitive language together for, an infinite number of scenarios, but would like to see some language for that particular scenario.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Pereira had mentioned a scenario that he could include of looking at other options. And that also could be prepared, and maybe he could word that.
That was to reduce the number of city seats?
You want to give me a draft copy and then I'll refine it?
Yes, Mr. Olivera.
I think you're putting an unfair burden on staff, because we get that meeting next week, I can tell already there's gonna be more than one option. And no matter what they do, we'll come up with a different one. It'd be a lot easier to sit down, discuss it, if we can agree on an option, then bring it back. Another month ain't gonna make this, make any difference.
Yeah. So I would like to see that option, and would make a motion to that effect.
The motion to discuss and to agree upon an option to be brought back for a final vote?
Yeah, but I'd like to have some language together that has a 9-person board.
That's going from discussion to putting actual scenarios together.
That's right. Well, I mean, the idea was to have these scenarios, set up anyway, but I'm sympathetic to the idea that, they want something definitive. I think there has to be a majority. Well, I think there has to be a majority direction on that. So.
We're not going to approve it. It's just going to be, and I doubt if that will apply at the next meeting.
Yeah, I don't know if it will either, but we don't know unless we talk about it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
How about this? We prepare the option that Mr. Murphy is considering. And then if other options come up, then staff will have time within the next month to prepare if we designate an option to come back for a final vote. We prepare.
So you're setting yourself up to never die.
No. I'm
Yeah,
just
you
telling
are.
you, if something else comes up that staff is not prepared for, it's going to take another meeting. If Mr.
Exactly.
Murphy's option does not fly, and someone, and this group by supermajority agrees upon an option other than what's present now, that will take another month because staff will have time to prepare that. Stacy's saying it makes sense, I think.
Well, I think you're suggesting that, that the motion that's on the table, the 9 board member scenario, that Director Murphy is proposing, be on the agenda, but if that fails at the next meeting, that there would be opportunity to propose other scenarios that would be brought back at a later date to give staff
If it
time
was
to
so
prepare
moved,
it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you come back with something, not only are you going to do the makeup of the board, then you got to decide which cities are left out, which cities are in, how long the terms are.
I'm not intending
Board
to
members.
cut any cities out. That was Supervisor Pereira that brought that up. So, but
His intention is to take supervisors off.
no, I didn't propose any scenario that cut out a city.
What was his proposal?
It's 3, and 3. 3 supervisors with 3 cities.
No, 6 cities.
6 cities. 6 cities.
6 cities and 3 supervisors.
It's higher math, 3 plus 3 plus 3.
Yeah, but we knew that.
San Joaquin County does it.
So,
San Carlos doesn't do it.
I mean, as Director Valta,
Madera County.
sort of explained, I'd like to have that on the agenda for an up or down vote next time, and if people want to come forward with other ideas, they can, but I'd like to have that on the agenda for an up or down vote at the next meeting. And I'd make a motion to that effect.
Second that.
Who was the second?
Okay, roll call vote.
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Espinoza?
That's going to include discussion, so, yes.
No, it's not a discussion.
It does include discussion. If we're going to discuss it before we vote on it.
Because even if it goes down,
That's
there's going to be discussion.
It's a yes.
Director Pereira?
No.
Director Raymond?
So confirming there will be discussion, Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Okay, yes.
there's a discussion in every motion, so.
Director McGlynn?
Yes.
Director Olivera?
No.
Director Vialta,
Yes.
Director Murphy,
Yes.
motion carries.
Motion carries. Okay. So we'll move on. Number 23, Executive Director's Report. I think was that included?
Yeah, I just have one.
Do you have a highlight over the report?
Well, I just wanted to mention, I need my agenda back from council, if I could.
Agenda back from council.
Sorry.
I think I have yours.
Because
here's
I
yours.
wanted to just preview a few items that are coming. I realize that I often send updates, but I don't always give a quick highlight of what you can expect, and I often get questions about when certain items are coming on the agenda. So just to mention that, in the next, I would say August, September, October, this board will see us bring forward a contract for our financial advisor for the landfill gas to energy project, the CEQA document for the landfill gas to energy project. We'll have a public hearing on that project as well. We'll have a contract award for the recycling and diversion consultant that we talked about that will be available to assist the jurisdictions. The LTF reserve policy discussion, the 2019 Measure B implementation plan, the recommendations of which you approved today, and the O&M contract for transit. And I hope that got recorded, fingers crossed. We're on track for our schedule for O&M, but that's it, just a preview of what's to come. Not exclusive, but exhaustive, but the highlights.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions or comments on this? Now we're going down to the director's reports. Director Raymond? Director McGuinn?
The Dos Palos City Council this last Tuesday followed the request of MCAG in Merced County in supporting the 2020 census and a complete and accurate count of all persons in California.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oliveira?
I hope everybody had a good 4th of July. I know the city of Gustine did. And this weekend, if you want to come to a Portuguese festa, there's one this weekend
And Gustine.
in Gustine. This is a little one.
Mr. Villalta?
Well, we had the Italian celebration last week, so I guess we can have the Portuguese this week. That's it.
Mr. Aguilar?
No. Nothing through.
Mr. Murphy? Okay, with that, I'll adjourn the meeting.